Good day, church. Welcome to Word on Wednesdays, and we're going to continue our series of Dan Sutherland's book, Transitioning, Leading Your Church Through Change. And we've been away for a couple of weeks, but I just want to bring you up to speed. I was going to kind of review the whole thing, but I wish if you would just go back and review the other tapes and of the previous lessons, and it'll bring us back where we are today. I'm sure you remember when we talked before. We talked about vision and all of that. The ideal of the vision that we talked about had a lot to do with where God wanted the church to be. When we talk about vision, vision is a picture of what God wants to do in His church, and we shared with you before that God would accomplish the vision in His particular church if most people got up out of the way. We're utilizing the book of Nehemiah, and you all remember the book of Nehemiah, how in the first step we talked about was preparing for vision. We talked about collecting information, becoming discontent, where we talked about having a holy discontent for the status quo or where things are. And then we know that Nehemiah, as he prepared for vision, he fasted, prayed, and then he waited. We want to be in the center of God's will, and we defined then that the center of God's will was doing the right thing the right way with the right motive at the right time. Timing is everything when it comes to vision. When it comes to most of the things that we do, the difference between a foul ball and a home run is timing. So the first key to that first step was rushed preparation always result in sloppy vision. We've got to wait on God. There's something that God wants to do in and through us. And then the second step that we talked about out of the book was defining the vision. That when God gives vision, He gives it specifically for a specific purpose, for specific people. And in that, we talked about discovering your purpose, defining your target, and then deciding your strategy. How we're going to go at it, how we're going to get it done. And there's strategy to that. And the key for that second step was the more specific the vision, the more dynamic the result. Remember that we talked about how vision is active and continual. God is an active God, and He imposes an active vision upon His church. What worked in one generation probably will not work in another generation. You got to remember that you cannot continue to put new wine in old wine skins. And then we talked about planning the vision. That was the third step. We must plant the vision with the key leaders of the church, secure the approval of the power brokers, secure the assistance of those whose help you're going to need, and then seek the advice of a vision team. TEAM. Together, everyone accomplishes more. We got to learn how to expose our leaders to key to model churches who are already doing what we're trying to do, and so that'll kind of bring you up to speed to the step 4, which is sharing the vision. And so when we take a moment to kind of review, we already have taken the time to collect information about our community, about what's happening around the church and the neighborhood. Our neighborhoods are no longer predominantly black neighborhoods anymore, or African American. They're multicultural. So we've taken time to do our due diligence, to do our homework. We've become discontent with the way things are. We've fasted and prayed and even waited on God to hear, what direction God wanted us to go in. We've defined vision in terms of purpose, target, and strategy. And when you talk about target, you got to remember that you got to have a well-rounded target and a strategy. It's not always one way. I think one phrase says there are many ways to skin a cat, and we got to be careful that that's what we want to do. But we've planted the vision in the hearts and the minds, as well as the key leaders, and brought the vision team fully on board. We've got the power brokers on board, and by this time we're ready to share the vision with the whole church. When you get to Nehemiah, back at Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 16, you all remember that Nehemiah in verse 16 said, "And the officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing. I had not yet told the Jews, the priests, the nobles, the officials, and the rest who were to do the work." Nehemiah hadn't shared, that verse tells us that he hadn't shared his vision or what he was trying to do with the gist of the people. Only a few people knew what he was going to do, and there are only three groups of leaders that knew at the time. That was the power brokers, those whose help that he would need, and the vision team, those that helped him in regards to getting it done. Now it's time to share the vision with the two other groups, and so that's where we are now. I want us to look at this. We got to share the vision with the remaining leaders. You got the power brokers, you got the people whose help you're going to need, you got the vision team. You've already selected certain people on the vision team, and y'all remember before we talked about how the vision team had to be people that were trustworthy, people that were visionaries, people that were detailed, big picture people, people that you could trust, on that team. And everybody, nothing shoots a vision in its foot than a leak. So if you got people who just talk, it may not be the ones who need to be on the vision team. So if you share that, but now you got to share it with the remaining leaders. That includes every teacher in the church, every assistant in the church, every worker, every helper in the church, anyone who has any kind of responsibility in the life of the church. They must be included in this as step 4. When you begin to share that vision in a broader scale, you got to share it with anybody who has any responsibility. Leaders first, church second. And so before it's shared with the entire church from the pulpit, it's got to be shared with the entire leadership. And why? If you look at your outline, it says this: nothing devalues or alienates a leader as quickly as not knowing what's coming next before the rank and file know. In other words, you want to alienate specific people in your church, just start sharing from the pulpit or without sharing it with the rank and file. And that'll alienate certain leaders. It's almost like the book talks about how the pastor gets up on Sunday morning and shares some changes that are going to happen within the church, and those that are leaders, they know they have friends, and their friends come up and ask them, well, what did you think about pastor's announcement in the church and these changes? And the only recourse that leader can say is, I didn't know anything about what was happening. Now that's a sad commentary, and that'll put that leader on the spot. That's why it's so important to share the vision with the rest of the leaders. It sounds ridiculous, but it happens a lot in our churches, and it's difficult for a leader who knows, who does not know what's going on, to wholeheartedly support a vision. If they don't know, it's hard for them to wholeheartedly support. Leaders have a built-in need to know. That's not a bad thing. And we ought not take it personal. They just have a built-in need to know. When you get to Nehemiah 2, verse 6, it clearly states that he didn't share with the priest and the officials. You'll see that he didn't share with the nobles and the rest who were going to do the work. But when you get to chapter 3, you'll find out that that he lists all of the priests and the sons and people, individuals and officials who was working on the wall and at the different gates. So you got to ask the question, what happened between chapter 2, verse 16, and chapter 3 when everybody was working? Chapter 2, verse 16, no one knew, he said, except, there was only a few. And he didn't share with all those who were going to work on the wall. And then you get to chapter 3 and you find out all of these people, read it when you get time, all of these people were involved in working on the wall. What happened? Well, you got to read between the lines. It's obvious that Nehemiah shared with the rest of his leaders. Those leaders in chapter 3, leaders of those families that were to do work on the wall at the different gates. And, that's what we have to do as leaders, as pastors. We got to make sure that everybody, it doesn't mean that they all agree, but it just means that they're informed, you've shared it with them, you've shared your heart, and so they'll be able to buy in. It's a major mistake. Hear me, good beloved, not to take time to share the vision with the remaining leaders. And I know you're already saying, somebody might be out there asking why. Is because leaders who hear about changes in direction from the pulpit are not likely to support those changes. You can't allow the Sunday morning from the pulpit to be the first time a lot of your leaders hear. By the time you get to the pulpit and share, a majority of your leaders should already have heard of some impending changes or vision strategies or the other. The converse is true, that if leaders are on board with the vision before it's shared with the whole church, they'll become allies. They'll support you. Is a better, you'll have better support if you do that. And the advantage is that you build unity. You also, secondly, your outline tells you that you make time for questions to be asked and answered. Get that? Ask and answer. Because a lot of times you try to get leaders on board, you got to give some kind of clarity. There are a lot of questions. You got to make room for the questions, because here's what you got to understand. Sometimes, even as leaders, we don't have all the answers. They may ask the question that we didn't think of. So you give time for that. And then you also let your leadership become owners and carriers of the vision. You allow them to share in their own way with certain people, and they carry that vision a long way. So the first step in this fourth step is that we've got to share the vision with the remaining leaders. Don't make that mistake. Don't make the mistake of trying to go at it alone. Allow other leaders to carry the vision, and if they catch it, they'll carry it. If they catch it with enthusiasm, they'll carry it with enthusiasm. So we gotta see that there's something that happened in the book of Nehemiah between chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3. Nehemiah shared the vision. Then secondly, on this point, we got to share the vision with the remainder of the church. Why? Because it's the people, the majority of the people that's going to complete the vision. Those that are going to do the work. You cast vision, and the people, the majority of the people are going to be doing a lot of the legwork. So you got to share the vision with the remainder of the church, with the remaining leaders, and then with the remainder of the church. And the success of any vision comes down to one thing: will the majority of the church get behind the vision? That's key. And it boils down to that, because if the majority of the church is not with it or not behind it, then ultimately it will not succeed. So, think about this. Joshua, if he did not have the children of Israel, he'd have been just another conqueror trying to get something done. David would have been, if he didn't have the supporters and followers, he would have been just another king. And you all know the Chinese proverb says that he who thinks he leads but has no one following is only taking the walk. Here's what leaders got to make sure of, that we're not just taking the walk all willy-nilly. we got to make sure that we've got those people with us, that majority of the church with us, because we've shared the vision, we've shared our heart, we've shown a holy discontent, and we've done our study on the neighborhood. We see what things ought to be. We done fasted and prayed and talked about it, and we don't want to just be taking a walk on the wild side. We want to bring people along, and so you got to share, you got to talk, you got to answer questions. In Nehemiah 3, you'll find that people were actively working on the wall. And the reason behind that is because they caught the vision and they carried the baton. They ran with it. And so I've come to discover that that you got to be you have to be patient and carry that vision to the rest of the church. The key truth of this, number 4 in the book, is this: since vision is both caught and taught, it must be shared in multiple ways. If we're trying to get people to catch the vision and teach the vision or share the vision with others, it's got to be shared in multiple ways. People catch vision in multiple ways. You learn in multiple ways. And to get vision to as many people as possible, it has to be shared in many ways as possible. And so I'm going to give you 10 ways that we can share vision, and then we'll be out of here on this lesson. Read the book. It gives you a little more insight, but I just want to give you this. Number 1 way to share the vision is preaching. Don't underestimate the power of the pulpit. We've got to preach visionary sermons and share pieces of vision in every sermon that's preached. We gotta be proactive in how we unfold and unpack what the Lord has given us through the Word of God. We got to study to show ourselves approved, workmen that need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And it is through the Word that we share the way and the will of God for His local church, and so preaching is one of the primary ways that we share vision. The other one is small group vision studies. That's number 2. Like sending every adult Sunday school class or Saturday school class through aspects of the vision. If it's evangelism, if it's reaching the lost or discipleship, whatever it is, you can send your adult classes and even your young adult and youth classes, through aspects of the vision, so that you're sharing the vision in smaller groups and give people time to talk through things. And then other ways is vision statements. That's number 3. Condense your purpose into a single statement. My church in San Diego, when I was there years ago, Pastor Dr. Timothy Winters, they had a vision slogan that read like this: reaching the lost, teaching the saved to serve. I just thought that was wonderful. And that's something that has always stuck with me. And that's been when I was in my early 20s. Reaching the lost and teaching the saved to serve. And there are other vision phrases. You got to condense it. It doesn't need to be long phrase, but a long vision statement, but something simple and short. Then vision phrases, don't forget the power of phrases. I often say at our church, you may find a church just as good, but you won't find one any better. Talking about unity of the church and all that, and the need to have a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching church. I've heard others, short, catchy phrases like a church for the unchurched. The book gives us that one, or play to the audience of one. I like that phrase because it helps, the church to focus on the fact that it's all about God. And then church that I was a member of years ago in Dallas, Texas, now has just simply exploded, and that's Concord. Their statement or vision phrase is "We grow people." That is a wonderful vision phrase that people, they understand that if you're part of that church, one of the major goals is to grow people in Christ. And then I like another one, a church on the grow. It's a play on words, but those are vision phrases. And then vision verses is number 5. Rick Warren and Saddleback, uses the Great Commandment and Great Commission out of Matthew 22 and then Matthew 28. Faith stories is another one. Those are what we call testimonies. People, telling their testimony of how the Lord has impacted their life in certain ways, and those are great ways to share vision. And point and say, this is why we do what we do. For John or Bob or whoever shared their testimony. This is why we are emphasizing, growing people, because this is what happened to him or her. Those are testimonies, and those are great. 7th is that you can help people in the area of conferences. There are so many great conferences out there. I've been blessed to be a part of certain conferences that help me in my preaching, help me in my growth as a leader. I've been blessed to attend the E.K. Bailey Preaching Conference and Dr. H.B. Charles's preaching conference, and I've been, I know there's one in Houston as well at the Great Church Without Walls. But there are so many conferences that can teach you how to do what you're trying to do, and you're exposing people to churches that are 5-star, that are doing what you're trying to do. And those conferences are a great way. I've grown tremendously just attending certain conferences, and sometimes you can get a lot of stuff at your state convention and different things like that. And then number 8 is tapes and books or CDs, and books, certain books that you can expose the congregation to. At Cornerstone, we go through certain books that are trying to help us. And just like we're going through this book now, it's a book that's helping us, in regards to transitioning. And so, taking your people, you can't always take everyone to conferences, but you can expose them to certain books and certain CDs and programs that are out there. And then number 9 is one-on-one. We'll be wrapping this up now soon, and the number 9 is one-on-one. You catch vision the same way you catch a cold, by exposure. That is, in other words, you expose people, to other individuals who are visionary. And that one-on-one, when you share what the Lord is doing, and they turn around and share it, because your vision, you share it with somebody else. That one-on-one exposure to what we're doing and getting people on board, one-on-one, speaking to people, talking to people. I remember when we were doing the merger at this church. One of the ways that I shared with what I thought the Lord was doing with us was one-on-one. I shared it with people one-on-one. They would ask me my opinion, and they would ask me what I thought was the what I thought God was doing, and what I thought about certain aspects of it. And so that one-on-one, and people caught that vision. And when we got time down to merge the churches together, very few people, objected to the merger. And let me tell you, God has blessed tremendously. So that one-on-one, when you catch it, you got to share with somebody else. That's like a cold. People get they get exposed to that, and so the number 10, and this is the last one, and that is you got to live it out in your own life. You can't expect a church to catch vision that you're not living out in your own life. You just gotta recognize that you want folk to do certain things, and as a pastor, I've never asked people to do what I was not willing to do myself. So live it out. If you're talking about evangelism, you gotta share. If you're talking about teaching discipleship and being a church on the grow, you got to be able to help people in regards to growing themselves. You got to be the first one to step out there and live it out in your own life. And wrapping this up, the book says that you cannot fake passion. Now I like that, because we have to share vision with heart, and if we want people to be passionate, we got to share it with passion. You got to be passionate about it. If you really believe this, if you believe that this is what God has given you, don't just wallow through it like, I wish we could do this. No, you got to have some passion behind it, and you got to put your best foot forward when it comes to it. When you talk about evangelism, you got to be passionate about it. When you talk about praise and worship, and how we worship God, you got to be passionate about certain aspects of your vision, because if you want other people to be passionate and you're not passionate about it, then something's wrong. So just wrapping this up, I'm so grateful that we have gotten to this place, and next week we're going to launch, if you would, into so that next chapter, and that after we share that vision, this is the fourth step. The next chapter is implement the change. That's step 5, and we will talk about that one. I appreciate your time, and I thank you for allowing me to share in this moment. And I pray that your day goes well, and we will see you on next week. God bless.